The gentle ticking of clocks filled the air as Jack Holloway hunched over his workbench, squinting through his loop at the delicate gears of a wristwatch. His skilled hands moved with precision, but his furrowed brow betrayed the weight of his troubles. The past due notices piled high on his desk were a constant reminder of his struggling business. "There," he muttered, closing the watch case with a satisfying click. "At least someone's time is moving forward." Jack stretched, his joints popping in protest. The antique clocks that lined the walls of his small shop seemed to mock him with their synchronized ticking. Each second that passed was another reminder of his mounting debts and dwindling hopes. A knock at the door startled him. "We're closed," he called out, but the door swung open anyway. Jack Holloway? A stern-faced man in a crisp suit stood in the doorway, flanked by two others. "I'm afraid I have some bad news." Jack's heart sank. He knew this day would come, but he'd hoped. "You have 48 hours to vacate the premises," the man continued, his voice devoid of emotion. "I'm sorry, but the bank is foreclosing on your shop." "But I just need a little more time," Jack protested, desperation creeping into his voice. "Please, this shop was my father's. 48 hours, Mr. Holloway. Not a minute more." The door closed with a finality that echoed through the shop. Jack slumped into his chair, head in his hands. How had it come to this? His father had built this business from nothing, and now— Damn it! Jack's fist slammed down on the workbench, sending tools clattering to the floor. He needed a miracle, or at least a distraction. With a heavy sigh, Jack grabbed his coat and headed out into the chilly autumn evening. The streets were quiet, most shops already closed for the night. His feet carried him aimlessly until he found himself in front of Emma's Curiosities, a small antique shop he'd passed 100 times but never entered. A clearance sale sign caught his eye. Through the window, he could see a petite woman with graying hair arranging items on a shelf. Something compelled him to push open the door, a tiny bell announcing his presence. "Oh, hello there," the woman said, turning with a warm smile. "I'm Emma. Can I help you find anything?" Jack shook his head. "Just browsing, thanks." His eyes roamed over the cluttered shelves, filled with all manner of odd trinkets and dusty treasures. That's when he saw it. Nestled between a tarnished silver candlestick and a chipped porcelain doll was a pocket watch. Its golden case was dull with age, but Jack's trained eye could see the quality of craftsmanship. His fingers itched to examine it closer. "Interested in the watch?" Emma asked, noticing his gaze. "It's a beautiful piece, isn't it? Been sitting here for ages, though. No one seems to want these old-fashioned things anymore." Jack carefully picked up the watch, feeling its weight in his palm. "May I?" he asked, reaching for his loop. Emma nodded, watching curiously as Jack examined the timepiece with expert eyes. "My God," he whispered, This is incredible. The movement, the engraving, this is a genuine breguet from the late 1800s. Do you have any idea what this is worth?" Emma's eyes widened. "Really? I had no idea. The man who sold it to me said it didn't even work anymore." Jack's mind raced. If he could acquire this watch, restore it, it could be the answer to all his problems. But he knew he couldn't afford anything close to its true value. How much are you asking for it?" he asked hesitantly. Emma studied him for a moment, then glanced at the clearance sign in the window. "You know what? I've had a good day. Let's say $50. It's just gathering dust here anyway." Jack's heart leapt. "Are you sure? I mean, I'd love to, but—" "I'm sure," Emma said with a kind smile. "Something tells me it belongs with you." With trembling hands, Jack paid for the watch, hardly believing his luck. As he left the shop, cradling his precious find, he felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. Little did Jack know, this was only the beginning. The antique pocket watch he now possessed would set in motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. As he hurried home, eager to begin work on his new acquisition, the watch ticked steadily in his pocket, counting down to a destiny he could never have imagined. Back in his shop, Jack cleared his workbench with a sweep of his arm, sending the past due notices fluttering to the floor. He set the pocket watch down reverently, his excitement building as he gathered his tools. "All right, old friend," he murmured to the watch. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding." As Jack carefully opened the case, a small piece of yellowed paper fluttered out, landing on the workbench. Curious, he unfolded it, revealing a cryptic message written in faded ink. When the lion roars at midnight, seek the queen's forgotten crown. Where shadows dance on marble walls, the truth lies buried underground. Jack's brow furrowed. What the? He turned the paper over, finding more writing on the back. RG 1962, the greatest prize still waits to be claimed. A shiver ran down Jack's spine. He had stumbled onto something far more intriguing than a valuable antique. But what did it mean? And why was it hidden in this watch? As Jack pondered the mysterious message, he failed to notice the shadow that briefly darkened his shop window. Outside, a figure melted back into the night, a phone pressed to their ear. "It's been found," a hushed voice said. "After all these years, the watch has resurfaced." Inside, oblivious to the forces now set in motion, Jack Holloway bent over his workbench, the ticking of the antique watch echoing in the quiet shop. His skilled hands began the delicate work of restoration, unaware that with each passing second, he was winding his way deeper into a decades-old mystery. The gears of fate had begun to turn, and there would be no stopping them now. As the night wore on, Jack lost himself in the intricate workings of the pocket watch. The familiar task of restoration brought a sense of calm, even as questions about the cryptic message swirled in his mind. Hours passed, and the first hints of dawn were creeping through the shop windows when Jack finally set down his tools with a satisfied sigh. The watch gleamed in the soft light, its golden case polished to a warm glow. "There," he said, admiring his handiwork. "Good as new. Well, almost." Jack's finger traced the ornate engraving on the case, an intricate design of intertwining vines and flowers. But something caught his eye, a tiny irregularity in the pattern. He grabbed his loupe for a closer look. "What have we here?" he muttered, noticing a nearly invisible seam. With the gentlest of touches, he pressed on the spot. Click. A hidden compartment in the watch case sprung open, revealing a small, tarnished key. Jack's heart raced. "Unbelievable! There's more to this mystery than I thought." He carefully extracted the key, turning it over in his palm. It was old, that much was clear, with an ornate design on the bow. But what did it open, and how did it relate to the cryptic message? Jack's mind whirled with possibilities. The lion roaring at midnight, could it be referring to a specific location? And what about the queen's forgotten crown? He glanced at the clock on the wall and started. It was nearly 6 a.m. He'd been working all night without realizing it. "I need coffee," he decided, "and maybe a fresh perspective." As Jack locked up his shop and stepped out into the cool morning air, he failed to notice the sleek black car parked across the street. Inside, a woman with sharp eyes watched him through tinted windows, speaking quietly into a phone. "Target is on the move. The watch is in his possession. How should we proceed?" A pause, then. "Understood. We'll continue surveillance for now." Jack, blissfully unaware of the attention he was attracting, made his way to his favorite coffee shop. The quiet streets of the early morning felt different somehow, charged with potential. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret, every passerby a potential player in this unfolding mystery. As he sipped his coffee, Jack's mind raced. He knew he should be focused on saving his shop, on the very real threat of losing everything in less than 2 days. But the allure of the mystery was too strong to ignore. "What have I gotten myself into?" he wondered aloud, earning a curious glance from a nearby patron. Little did Jack know, his innocent purchase of an antique watch had set him on a collision course with a decades-old conspiracy. Forces were gathering, drawn by the reemergence of a timepiece long thought lost. And at the center of it all was Jack Holloway, a simple watchmaker about to be thrust into a world of danger, intrigue, and a treasure beyond imagination. The gears of fate continued to turn, ticking ever closer to a destiny Jack could never have foreseen. As he finished his coffee and stepped back out onto the street, the morning sun glinted off the pocket watch in his jacket. Its steady ticking was a countdown, not just to the bank's 48-hour deadline, but to the moment when Jack's ordinary life would be forever changed. Jack's mind raced as he walked back to his shop, the weight of the pocket watch heavy in his jacket. The cryptic message and the hidden key burned in his thoughts, demanding answers. But reality intruded as he approached his storefront, the foreclosure notice taped to the door, a stark reminder of his precarious situation. "Focus, Jack," he muttered to himself. You've got bigger problems right now." As he unlocked the door, a voice called out behind him. "Mr. Holloway?" Jack turned to see a tall, broad-shouldered man in a crisp suit approaching. "Detective Michael Reeves," the man said, flashing a badge. "I was hoping we could have a word." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "What's this about, Detective?" Reeves' eyes narrowed slightly. "It's about a watch, Mr. Holloway. One you recently acquired." For a moment, Jack considered denying everything, but something in the detective's intense gaze told him that would be a mistake. I'm not sure I understand. It's just an antique I bought yesterday." "May I see it?" Reeves asked, his tone making it clear it wasn't really a request. With reluctance, Jack produced the watch. As soon as Reeves laid eyes on it, his demeanor changed. "My God," he breathed. "It's real, after all these years." "What's going on?" Jack demanded, his patience wearing thin. "Why is a detective interested in an old watch?" Reeves looked around cautiously. "Not here. Is there somewhere we can talk privately?" Moments later, they were in Jack's cramped office, the detective pacing as he spoke. "What I'm about to tell you is strictly confidential, Mr. Holloway. That watch in your possession, it's connected to one of the most notorious unsolved crimes in this city's history." Jack's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "The Royale Gallery heist of 1962, Reeves said, his voice low. "Over $50 million in art and jewels stolen in a single night. The case has been cold for decades. But that watch, it belonged to the mastermind behind it all." Jack's mind reeled. The date on the cryptic note, 1962, suddenly took on new meaning. "But how? Why is it important now?" Reeves leaned in close. "Because, Mr. Holloway, we believe that watch is the key to finding the stolen treasures. They were never recovered, you see. And now, after all this time..." A sharp knock at the shop's front door made them both jump. Through the glass, Jack could see a striking woman with platinum blonde hair, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. "Who's that?" Reeves asked, tension evident in his voice. I don't know," Jack stammered. But as he moved to open the door, a flash of recognition hit him. He'd seen her before, hadn't he? In the coffee shop that morning, watching him. The woman strode in with purpose, her eyes locking onto the watch in Jack's hand. "Mr. Holloway," she said, her voice cool and refined. "My name is Victoria Blackwood. I represent a group of interested parties. That watch you're holding, we'd like to make you an offer for it." Jack's head was spinning. In the span of 24 hours, his mundane life had turned into something out of a thriller novel. "I'm sorry, but the watch isn't for sale," he said firmly, though his voice trembled slightly. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "I don't think you understand the situation, Mr. Holloway. That watch is far more valuable and dangerous than you realize. For your own safety, I suggest you hand it over." "Now wait just a minute," Reeves interjected, stepping forward. "This is an ongoing police investigation. You can't just..." "Detective Reeves," Victoria cut him off, a hint of amusement in her tone. "Still chasing ghosts after all these years? I'm afraid you're out of your depth here." The tension in the room was palpable. Jack looked between the detective and the mysterious woman, feeling like a pawn in a game he didn't understand. "I think you both need to leave," he said, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. "This is my property, and I'm not giving it to anyone." Victoria's expression hardened. "You're making a grave mistake, Mr. Holloway. There are forces at play here you can't possibly comprehend." "Be that as it may," Jack replied, "this watch is staying with me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a business to run." As he ushered them out, Jack could feel their eyes boring into him. He knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Once alone, Jack slumped against the door, his heart pounding. What had he gotten himself into? He pulled out the cryptic note again, studying the words that now seemed loaded with dangerous potential. "When the lion roars at midnight, seek the queen's forgotten crown. Where shadows dance on marble walls, the truth lies buried underground." The city. There was a large lion statue in front of the old library downtown. And the queen's forgotten crown, could that be referring to the Queen's Park, with its faded grandeur? Before he could ponder further, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "The watch holds more secrets than you know. Meet me at the Starlight Cafe at 2 p.m. Come alone." Jack's pulse quickened. Could it be Emma, the antique shop owner? But how did she get his number? Glancing at his watch, Jack realized he had a decision to make. Ignore the message and pretend none of this was happening? Or dive deeper into this web of mystery and potential danger? The responsible thing would be to turn the watch over to the police and focus on saving his shop. But the allure of adventure, of potentially uncovering a decades-old secret, was too strong to resist. "Well, Dad," Jack said, looking up at the portrait of his late father on the wall. "You always said life was about taking risks. I guess it's time I took one." With newfound determination, Jack grabbed his coat and headed out, the antique watch safely tucked in an inner pocket. As he walked towards the Starlight Cafe, he failed to notice the sleek black car that pulled away from the curb, following at a discreet distance. The quiet streets of his familiar neighborhood suddenly seemed full of hidden dangers and potential clues. Every passing stranger could be a player in this unfolding drama. Jack's senses were on high alert, his mind racing with questions. Who was Victoria Blackwood really? And who were the interested parties she represented? Why was Detective Reeves so invested in a decades-old cold case? And most importantly, what secrets did this watch truly hold? As Jack neared the cafe, a flicker of movement in a shop window caught his eye. He turned, heart pounding, only to see his own reflection staring back at him. But for a split second, he could have sworn he saw someone else. A face he didn't recognize, watching him intently. Shaking off the paranoia, Jack entered the Starlight Cafe. The lunch rush was in full swing, the buzz of conversation filling the air. He scanned the room, looking for Emma's familiar face. "Over here, Jack," a voice called softly from a corner booth. Jack's jaw dropped as he approached. It was Emma, but not as he'd seen her before. Gone was the gray hair and grandmotherly demeanor. Instead, a vibrant woman in her 40s sat before him, her sharp eyes studying him intently. "Please, sit," gesturing to the seat across from her. "We have much to discuss and not much time." As Jack slid into the booth, his mind reeling from this latest twist, Emma leaned in close. "I suppose I owe you an explanation," she began, her voice low and urgent. "But first, I need to know, do you have the watch with you?" Jack nodded slowly, his hand instinctively moving to his pocket. Emma's eyes flashed with a mixture of relief and concern. "Good. Now listen carefully, Jack. That watch you're carrying, it's not just a valuable antique. It's a key to unlocking a secret that's been buried for over 60 years. A secret that some very dangerous people would kill to protect." "Who are you really?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "And how are you involved in all this?" Emma took a deep breath, glancing around the cafe before answering. "My real name is Emma Sinclair, and the man who owned that watch, he was my grandfather." Jack's eyes widened in shock. "Your grandfather? You mean?" "Yes," Emma cut him off. "The mastermind behind the Royale Gallery heist, the greatest art thief of his generation. And now, Jack, whether you like it or not, you've been drawn into his final game." Pup. As Emma's words sank in, Jack felt as though the floor was tilting beneath him. The busy cafe faded into the background as he struggled to process this new information. "But why me?" he finally managed to ask. "Why give me the watch?" Emma's expression softened slightly. "It wasn't random, Jack. Your father, he and my grandfather were old friends. I've been watching you for years, waiting for the right moment. When I saw your shop was in trouble, I knew it was time." Jack's mind raced back to childhood memories, a jovial old man who'd visit his father occasionally, always with a twinkle in his eye and pockets full of sweets. Could that have been? "My grandfather was many things," Emma continued, her voice tinged with a mixture of pride and regret. "A thief, yes, but also a man of principle. He had his reasons for the heist, reasons that went far beyond mere greed. And now, after all these years, it's time for the truth to come out." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, leather-bound journal. This was his. It contains clues to the location of the stolen art, but also to something far more valuable, something that could change everything. As Emma slid the journal across the table, a commotion near the cafe entrance caught their attention. Jack's heart leapt into his throat as he recognized Detective Reeves pushing his way through the crowd, his eyes scanning the room intently. "We're out of time," Emma hissed, suddenly on high alert. "Take the journal and go. Follow the clues, Jack. Trust no one. And whatever you do, don't let that watch out of your sight." "But I don't understand," Jack protested, even as he pocketed the journal. Emma cut him off with a sharp gesture. There's no time to explain everything now. Just know that you're part of something bigger than you can imagine. The fate of the stolen art, yes, but also, let's just say there are secrets buried in this city's history that some very powerful people want to keep hidden. She stood abruptly, her demeanor shifting back to that of a harmless old woman. Good luck, Jack, she said loudly, her voice quavering. I do hope you can fix my old brooch. With that, Emma shuffled away, leaving Jack alone at the table, his head spinning. He could see Reeves approaching, a look of grim determination on his face. In that moment, Jack made a split-second decision. He couldn't let the detective corner him here, not with Emma's journal burning a hole in his pocket. With a deep breath, he stood and made his way towards the cafe's back exit. As he pushed through the door into a narrow alley, Jack could hear Reeves calling his name, but there was no turning back now. He was committed to seeing this through, wherever it might lead. The cool air hit Jack's face as he emerged onto a side street, his heart pounding. He ducked into a nearby shop entranceway, watching as Reeves burst out of the cafe moments later, looking left and right in frustration. Once the coast was clear, Jack set off at a brisk pace, his mind racing. He needed a quiet place to examine the journal and the watch more closely. But where? His shop wasn't safe. Too many people knew to look for him there. As he walked, a memory surfaced, an old clock tower in the heart of the city, long abandoned but still standing. His father had taken him there once, showing him the massive gears and intricate mechanisms. It would be the perfect place to hide and think. Jack made his way through winding streets, constantly checking over his shoulder for signs of pursuit. The weight of the watch in his pocket seemed to grow heavier with each step, a tangible reminder of the bizarre situation he found himself in. Finally, he reached the clock tower. The entrance was boarded up, but Jack remembered a hidden side door his father had shown him. With a bit of effort, he managed to pry it open and slip inside. The interior was dusty and dim, shafts of afternoon sunlight filtering through grimy windows. Jack climbed the creaking stairs, the smell of old wood and metal filling his nostrils. At the top, he found a small alcove with a view of the city spread out below. Settling down with his back against a wall, Jack pulled out the watch, the cryptic note, and Emma's journal. It was time to put the pieces together. He opened the journal with trembling hands, flipping through pages filled with sketches, notes, and what looked like coded messages. One page caught his eye, a detailed drawing of the watch, with annotations pointing to hidden mechanisms. My God, Jack whispered, examining the watch more closely. There, just as the drawing indicated, was a tiny lever disguised as part of the decorative engraving. With a delicate touch, he activated it. The watch face suddenly split open, revealing a complex series of gears and levers unlike anything Jack had ever seen. It wasn't just a timepiece, it was some kind of intricate puzzle mechanism. As Jack marveled at the craftsmanship, a small piece of microfilm fluttered out, landing on his lap. He held it up to the light, squinting to make out the tiny writing and diagrams etched upon it. The final piece, he read aloud, his voice echoing in the empty tower. The key to unlocking the vault lies within the Queen's forgotten crown. But beware, the path is guarded by those who would keep the past buried. Jack's mind raced. The Queen's forgotten crown. It had to be referring to the abandoned Queen's Theater on the edge of town. Once a grand palace of entertainment, it had fallen into disrepair decades ago. But what vault? And who were these mysterious guardians? Before Jack could ponder further, a noise from below made him freeze. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, were climbing the tower stairs. His heart pounding, Jack quickly reassembled the watch and gathered the journal and notes. He looked around frantically for a hiding place or escape route. The footsteps grew closer. Jack pressed himself into a shadowy corner, scarcely daring to breathe. A figure appeared at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the fading afternoon light. As they stepped forward, Jack's eyes widened in recognition and disbelief. "It can't be," he whispered. "You?" The newcomer's face twisted into a cold smile. "Hello, Jack. I believe you have something that belongs to me." In that moment, as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Jack realized that the true nature of the mystery and the danger he faced was far greater than he could have ever imagined. The gears of fate continued to turn, inexorably drawing Jack deeper into a web of secrets, lies, and long-buried truths. As he faced this new threat, he knew that his next move would determine not just his own fate, but potentially the fate of the entire city. The watch ticked steadily in his pocket, a constant reminder that time was running out. The figure stepping out of the shadows sent a chill down Jack's spine. It was Victoria Blackwood, but her demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the cool professionalism. In its place was a predatory intensity that made Jack's hair stand on end. "I must admit, Jack, you've led us on quite a merry chase," Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "But playtime is over. Hand over the watch and the journal, and perhaps we can end this amicably." Jack's mind raced. He was trapped, cornered like a rat in this dusty old clock tower, but something didn't add up. "Why?" he demanded, stalling for time. "Why is this watch so important to you?" Victoria's eyes glittered dangerously. "Oh, Jack, if you only knew the true value of what you're holding. It's not about the art, you see. It never was. Your little watchmaker's prize is the key to unlocking a power that could reshape this entire city." As she spoke, Jack's hand slowly inched towards a loose gear lying on a nearby workbench. If he could just reach it. "What are you talking about?" he asked, genuinely confused. "It's just a watch, albeit an extraordinary one." Victoria laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "Just a watch? Oh, you naive fool. That watch is a masterpiece of engineering, decades ahead of its time. Hidden within its mechanisms is the blueprint for a device capable of manipulating the very fabric of reality." Jack's eyes widened in disbelief. That's impossible." "Is it?" Victoria countered, taking a step closer. "Think about it, Jack. Why else would so many powerful people be chasing after a simple timepiece? Your grandfather's friend, Emma's grandfather, he wasn't just a master thief. He was a visionary, a genius who saw beyond the limitations of his time." As Victoria monologued, Jack's fingers finally closed around the heavy gear. He tensed, ready to make his move. "The art heist was just a cover," Victoria continued, her voice rising with excitement. "The real prize was always the watch. And now, after all these years, we're so close to—" Clang! The gear flew from Jack's hand, striking Victoria squarely in the forehead. She stumbled backward, momentarily stunned. Jack seized his chance, barreling past her and down the stairs. "Stop him!" Victoria's enraged scream echoed through the tower. Jack's feet pounded down the steps, taking them two at a time. He could hear pursuit close behind. Victoria wasn't alone. As he burst out onto the street, a black SUV screeched to a halt in front of him. The door flew open, revealing Detective Reeves. "Get in!" Reeves shouted. "Now!" For a split second, Jack hesitated. Could he trust the detective? But the sound of footsteps behind him made the decision for him. He dove into the car, which peeled away from the curb before he could even close the door. "What the hell is going on?" Jack demanded as they sped through the city streets. Reeves's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "I'm sorry, Jack. I couldn't tell you everything before. There's more at stake here than you can possibly imagine." As the detective spoke, filling in the gaps of the incredible story, Jack's world tilted on its axis. The watch, it turned out, was more than just a key to finding stolen art. It was the culmination of decades of secret research, a device that could potentially alter the very nature of time and space. "But why me?" Jack asked, his head spinning. "Why drag me into all this?" Reeves's expression softened slightly. "Because, Jack, you're the only one who can finish what your father and Emma's grandfather started. The watch isn't complete. It needs the skills of a master watchmaker to unlock its full potential." Jack's mind reeled. His father had known about this all along? Had been part of it? Before he could process this revelation, a bullet shattered the rear window. Victoria and her goons were in hot pursuit. "Hang on!" Reeves yelled, swerving violently to avoid the gunfire. The car chase that ensued was like something out of an action movie. Jack clung to his seat as Reeves expertly maneuvered through traffic, the sounds of screeching tires and blaring horns filling the air. "We need to get to the Queen's Theater," Jack shouted over the chaos. The final clue, it mentioned the Queen's forgotten crown. Reeves nodded grimly, executing a hair-raising turn that sent their pursuers crashing into a row of parked cars. "Hold on tight. This is going to get bumpy." As they raced towards the outskirts of the city, Jack's mind was a whirlwind of questions and revelations. The watch in his pocket seemed to pulse with potential energy, as if aware of the pivotal moment approaching. The Queen's Theater loomed before them, a crumbling monument to faded glory. Reeves barely slowed as they approached, crashing through the barricaded entrance in a shower of splintered wood. "Go!" the detective yelled as the car skidded to a halt in the dusty lobby. "Find what you need, I'll hold them off." Jack didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted through the decaying theater, the beam of his phone's flashlight illuminating peeling wallpaper and moldering velvet seats. "The Queen's forgotten crown," he muttered, searching frantically. Then he saw it, a massive chandelier, hanging precariously from the domed ceiling. In its heyday, it would have sparkled like a crown of stars. Jack's watchmaker's eyes quickly found what others would miss, a tiny keyhole disguised as part of the ornate metalwork. With trembling hands, he inserted the antique key from the watch. A low rumble filled the air as hidden mechanisms groaned to life. The floor beneath the chandelier began to sink, revealing a secret passage. "Holloway!" Victoria's enraged voice echoed through the theater. The sound of gunfire and breaking glass told Jack that Reeves' distraction wouldn't last much longer. Taking a deep breath, Jack descended into the unknown depths beneath the theater. The passage led to a circular chamber, dominated by a strange chair-like device bristling with gears and levers. This was it, the invention that Emma's grandfather and Jack's father had given everything to protect, the device that could change everything. Jack approached it slowly, the watch growing almost uncomfortably warm in his pocket. He knew, without fully understanding how, that the final step required his unique skills. As he began to work, his fingers moving with a surety that belied his racing thoughts, Jack could hear the sounds of battle growing closer. Reeves' voice, strained but determined, echoed down the passage. "Hurry, Jack! We don't have much time." The device hummed to life under Jack's expert touch, gears meshing and energy building. But even as the power grew, Jack was struck by a moment of doubt. Should this kind of power exist, what right did he have to unleash it on the world? The choice was taken from him as Victoria burst into the chamber, her face contorted with rage and desperation. "Stop!" she screamed, raising her gun. "Step away from the device." Time seemed to slow. Jack looked at Victoria, then at the activated device, then down at the watch in his hands. In that moment, he understood what he had to do. With a decisive motion, Jack raised the watch high. "You want it so badly?" he called out. "Then catch!" He hurled the watch towards Victoria with all his might. Her eyes widened, her gun hand lowering instinctively to catch the precious timepiece. In that split second of distraction, Jack lunged for the device's control lever. His hand closed around it just as Victoria realized her mistake. "No!" she screamed, raising her gun once more. But it was too late. Jack pulled the lever, and the world exploded into blinding light. When Jack's vision cleared, he found himself back in his shop. He blinked in confusion, looking around at the familiar surroundings. Everything was exactly as it had been before he'd bought the fateful watch. Had it all been a dream? A hallucination brought on by stress and desperation? But then Jack noticed something odd. The foreclosure notice on his door was gone. In its place was a letter from the bank, congratulating him on his recent loan approval. As Jack tried to make sense of what had happened, the shop door chimed. He looked up to see Emma, the real Emma, not her younger disguise, enter with a warm smile. "Hello, Jack," she said, her eyes twinkling with a hint of shared secret. "I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing with that special project we discussed." Jack's mouth opened and closed, 1,000 questions on the tip of his tongue. But in the end, he simply nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. "It's coming along nicely," he replied, understanding dawning. "I think I've finally figured out how all the pieces fit together." Emma's smile widened. "I knew you would, Jack. You always were the right man for the job." As she turned to leave, Emma paused at the door. "Oh, and Jack, your father would be proud." With that, she was gone, leaving Jack alone in his shop, a shop that was now secure, with a future as bright as the gleaming timepieces that surrounded him. Jack looked down at his workbench, where a familiar golden watch sat, ticking steadily. But now, instead of a burden or a mystery, it was a reminder. a reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures happen when we least expect them, and that the power to change our fate often lies within our own skilled hands. With a contented sigh, Jack picked up his tools and got back to work. After all, he had a lot of time to make up for. As the days passed, Jack found himself settling into a new rhythm. His shop, once teetering on the brink of foreclosure, was now thriving. Customers flocked to Holloway's timepieces, drawn by whispers of the watchmaker's extraordinary skill and the magical quality of his restorations. But for Jack, the true magic lay in the quiet moments, in the gentle ticking of the antique pocket watch that now sat on a velvet cushion in his shop window, in the knowing glances exchanged with Emma during her frequent visits, in the letters that occasionally arrived postmarked from exotic locations containing nothing but a simple thank you, signed with a familiar Mr. Michael Reeves, he presumed. One evening, as Jack was closing up shop, he noticed a small package on his workbench. His heart quickened as he unwrapped it, revealing a leather-bound journal, identical to the one Emma had given him in that fateful meeting at the Starlight Cafe. With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside, he found page after page of technical drawings, equations, and notes. But it was the inscription on the first page that brought tears to his eyes. To my son, Jack, the greatest adventure is the one that lies ahead. Trust in your skills, your heart, and the inexorable march of time. Love, Dad. Jack ran his fingers over the words, feeling a connection to his father that transcended time and space. He understood now that the events of that incredible day, whether dream, alternate reality, or something in between, had changed him profoundly. The mysteries of the watch, the hidden vault, Victoria Blackwood's machinations, they all paled in comparison to the realization that he, Jack Holloway, had the power to shape his own destiny, just as his father and Emma's grandfather had done before him. As Jack settled into his favorite armchair, the journal open on his lap, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. The ticking of the clocks that surrounded him no longer felt oppressive. Instead, it was a symphony of possibilities, each second pregnant with potential. He knew that somewhere out there, forces were still at work. The device beneath the Queen's Theater might still exist. Victoria and her shadowy organization might still be searching. But Jack was ready to face whatever challenges time might bring, armed with the wisdom of the past and the hope of the future. The next morning, as Jack opened his shop, he noticed something different in the air. A charge, an excitement that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of reality. And as his first customer of the day walked in, Jack couldn't help but smile. "Welcome," he said warmly. "How can I help you today?" The customer, an elderly gentleman with kind eyes, placed a battered pocket watch on the counter. "I was hoping you might be able to repair this old thing," he said. "It's been in my family for generations, but it hasn't worked in years." Jack picked up the watch, his expert eyes immediately noting its unique construction. "I'd be happy to take a look," he replied. "You know, sometimes these old timepieces hold more secrets than we realize." As Jack set to work, he felt the familiar thrill of discovery coursing through him. Who knew what mysteries this watch might hold? What adventures might be set in motion by its repair? One thing was certain, Jack Holloway was ready for whatever time had in store. And now, dear viewer, as our tale draws to a close, I hope you've enjoyed this journey through time, mystery, and self-discovery. Jack's adventure may be over, but yours is just beginning. If you found yourself captivated by the ticking of time and the allure of hidden secrets, why not join our community of mystery enthusiasts? By subscribing to this channel, you'll unlock a treasure trove of stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Remember, just like Jack, you have the power to shape your own destiny. Each video you watch, each story you engage with, is another step on your own extraordinary journey. So why wait? Click that subscribe button now and set your own adventure in motion. Share this video with friends who appreciate a good mystery. After all, the best secrets are those shared with kindred spirits. And who knows, perhaps in the ticking of a clock or the turning of a key, you'll find your own life-changing discovery. The choice, as always, is yours. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your mind curious, and your spirit ready for adventure. For in the words of Jack's father, the greatest adventure is the one that lies ahead. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.